Hello, this is John T. Rhapsodes Esquire, purveyor of awesome old-school audio stories, bringing you an instructive story today from 1907 by O. Henry called The Pendulum. William Sidney Porter, writing under the pen name O. Henry, walked the earth from 1862 to 1910, mostly in Texas and New York. Hear the words of old. The Pendulum, from 1907, by O. Henry. 81st Street, let 'em out, please, yelled the shepherd in blue. A flock of citizen sheep scrambled out, and another flock scrambled aboard. Ding, ding. The cattle cars of the Manhattan Elevated Railway rattled away, and John Perkins drifted down the stairway of the station with the released flock. John walked slowly toward his flat. Slowly, because in the lexicon of his daily life, there was no such word as perhaps. There are no surprises awaiting a man who has been married 2 years and lives in a flat. As he walked, John Perkins prophesied to himself with gloomy and downtrodden cynicism the foregone conclusions of the monotonous day. Katie would meet him at the door with a kiss flavored with cold cream and butterscotch. He would remove his coat, sit upon a macadamized lounge, and read, in the evening paper, of Russians and Japanese slaughtered by the deadly linotype, referencing the Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905. For dinner, there would be a pot roast, a salad flavored with a dressing warranted not to crack or injure the leather, stewed rhubarb, and the bottle of strawberry marmalade blushing at the certificate of chemical purity on its label. After dinner, Katie would show him the new patch in her crazy quilt that the Iceman had cut for her off the end of his four-in-hand tie. At 7:30, they would spread newspapers over the furniture to catch the pieces of plastering that fell when the fat man in the flat overhead began to take his physical culture exercises. Exactly at 8, Hickey and Mooney of the vaudeville team, unbooked, in the flat across the hall, would yield to the gentle influence of delirium tremens and begin to overturn chairs under the delusion that Hammerstein was pursuing them with a $500 a week contract. Then the gent at the window across the air shaft would get out his flute. The nightly gas leak would steal forth the frolic in the highways. The dumbwaiter would slip off its trolley. The janitor would drive Mrs. Zanatowski's 5 children once more across the Yalu. The lady with the champagne shoes and the Skye Terrier would trip downstairs and paste her Thursday name over her bell and letterbox, and the evening routine of the Frogmore Flats would be underway. John Perkins knew these things would happen, and he knew that at 8:15 he would summon his nerve and reach for his hat, and that his wife would deliver this speech in a querulous tone. "Now, where are you going, I'd like to know, John Perkins?" "Thought I'd drop up to McCloskey's," he would answer, "and play a game or two of pool with the fellas." Of late, such had been John Perkins's habit. At 10 or 11 he would return. Sometimes Katie would be asleep, sometimes waiting up, ready to melt in the crucible of her ire, a little more gold plating from the wrought steel chains of matrimony. For these things Cupid will have to answer when he stands at the bar of justice with his victims from the Frogmore Flats. Tonight, John Perkins encountered a tremendous upheaval of the commonplace when he reached his door. No Katie was there with her affectionate, confectionate kiss. The 3 rooms seemed in portentous disorder. All about lay her things in confusion. Shoes in the middle of the floor, curling tongs, hair bows, kimonos, powder box, jumbled together on dresser and chairs. This was not Katie's way. With a sinking heart, John saw the comb with a curling cloud of her brown hair among its teeth. Some unusual hurry and perturbation must have possessed her, for she always carefully placed these combings in the little blue vase on the mantel to be someday formed into the coveted feminine rat, referring to an old practice of ladies saving hairs in their brushes to use later to add body to their hairstyle. Hanging conspicuously to the gas jet by a string was a folded paper. John seized it. It was a note from his wife running thus: "Dear John, I just had a telegram saying Mother is very sick. I'm going to take the 4:30 train. Brother Sam is going to meet me at the depot there. There is cold mutton in the icebox. I hope it isn't her quinsy or a throat infection again. Pay the milkman 50 cents. She had it bad last spring. Don't forget to write to the company about the gas meter, and your good socks are in the top drawer. I will write tomorrow. Hastily, Katie." Never during their 2 years of matrimony had he and Katie been separated for a night. John read the note over and over in a dumbfounded way. Here was a break in a routine that had never varied, and it left him dazed. There on the back of a chair hung, pathetically empty and formless, the red wrapper with black dots that she always wore while getting the meals. Her weekday clothes had been tossed here and there in her haste. A little paper bag of her favorite butterscotch lay with its string yet unwound. A daily paper sprawled on the floor, gaping rectangularly where a railroad timetable had been clipped from it. Everything in the room spoke of a loss, of an essence gone, of its soul and life departed. John Perkins stood among the dead remains with a strange feeling of desolation in his heart. He began to set the rooms tidy as well as he could. When he touched her clothes, a thrill of something like terror went through him. He had never thought what existence would be without Katie. She had become so thoroughly annealed into his life that she was like the air he breathed, necessary but scarcely noticed. Now, without warning, she was gone, vanished, as completely absent as if she had never existed. Of course, it would be only for a few days, or at most a week or two, but it seemed to him as if the very hand of death had pointed a finger at his secure and uneventful home. John dragged the cold mutton from the icebox, made coffee, and sat down to a lonely meal face to face with a strawberry marmalade's shameless certificate of purity. Bright among withdrawn blessings now appeared to him the ghosts of pot roasts and the salad with tan-polished dressing. His home was dismantled. A quinzied mother-in-law had knocked his Larry's and Penates, or personal household effects, sky high. After his solitary meal, John sat at a front window. He did not care to smoke. Outside, the city roared to him to come join in its dance of folly and pleasure. The night was his. He might go forth unquestioned and thrum the strings of jollity as free as any bachelor there. He might carouse and wander and have his fling until dawn if he liked, and there would be no wrathful Katy waiting for him, bearing the chalice that held the dregs of his joy. He might play pool at McCloskey's with his roistering friends until Aurora dimmed the electric bulbs if he chose. The hymeneal strings that had curbed him, always when the Frogmore Flats had palled upon him, were loosened. Katy was gone. John Perkins was not accustomed to analyzing his emotions. But as he sat in his Katy-bereft 10-by-12 parlor, he hit unerringly upon the keynote of his discomfort. He knew now that Katy was necessary to his happiness. His feeling for her, lulled into unconsciousness by the dull round of domesticity, had been sharply stirred by the loss of her presence. Has it not been dinned into us by proverb and sermon and fable that we never prize the music till the sweet-voiced bird has flown, or in other no less florid and true utterances? "I'm a double-dyed dub," mused John Perkins, "the way I've been treating Katy. Off every night playing pool and bumming with the boys instead of staying home with her. The poor girl here all alone with nothing to amuse her, and me acting that way. John Perkins, you're the worst kind of a shine. I'm going to make it up for the little girl. I'll take her out and let her see some amusement. And I'll cut out the McCloskey gang right from this minute." Yes, there was the city roaring outside for John Perkins to come dance in the train of Momus, or the Greek god of censure and mockery. And at McCloskey's the boys were knocking the balls idly into the pockets against the hour for the nightly game. But no Primrose Way, nor clicking cue, would woo the remorseful soul of Perkins the bereft. The thing that was his, lightly held and half scorned, had been taken away from him, and he wanted it. Backward to a certain man named Adam, whom the cherubim bounced from the orchard, could Perkins, the remorseful, trace his descent. Near the right hand of John Perkins stood a chair. On the back of it stood Katy's blue shirtwaist, or puffy blouse. It still retained something of her contour. Midway of the sleeves were fine individual wrinkles made by the movements of her arms in working for his comfort and pleasure. A delicate but impelling odor of bluebells came from it. John took it and looked long and soberly at the unresponsive grenadine. Katy had never been unresponsive. Tears, yes, tears, came into John Perkins's eyes. When she came back, things would be different. He would make up for all his neglect. What was life without her? The door opened. Katy walked in carrying a little hand satchel. John stared at her stupidly. "My, I'm glad to get back," said Katy. "Ma wasn't sick to amount to anything. Sam was at the depot and said she had just had a little spell and got all right soon after they telegraphed. So I took the next train back. I'm just dying for a cup of coffee." Nobody heard the click and rattle of the cogwheels as the third-floor front of the Frogmore Flats buzzed its machinery back into the order of things. A band slipped, a spring was touched, the gear was adjusted, and the wheels revolved in their old orbit. John Perkins looked at the clock. It was 8:15. He reached for his hat and walked to the door. "Now, where are you going, I'd like to know, John Perkins?" asked Katy, in a querulous tone. "Thought I'd drop up to McCloskey's," said John, "and play a game or two of pool with the fellas." And that concludes O. Henry's 1907 story called The Pendulum. This is John T. Rhapsodes, Esquire, purveyor of awesome old-school audio stories. Thank you for listening. You can find more stories like this in the channel's playlists. Find them by staying tuned for the last 20 seconds of this video and clicking on the end-screen icons. You can also go to the channel homepage and click on the Playlist tab. If you enjoyed this story and would like to hear more, please help me earn the warm embrace of Mr. and Mrs. YouTubes who look with loving favor upon those channels whose listeners faithfully download the YouTube app, create an account, subscribe to this channel, like, comment, click the notification bell, and share the videos with their friends so that they too can hear the words of old.